Okay, finally, let's discuss the last data structure we're going to learn. And let's be honest, the most important and often used data set, data frames or data sets. This is much more in line to what you know. Data frames are used to store tabular data. This is what you see when you open Excel or SPSS. They are represented as a special type of lists where every element of the list has to have the same length. Each element of the list can be thought of as a column. The length of each element of the list is the number of rows, and unlike matrices, data frames can store different classes of objects. Okay, so you can have numeric columns, character columns, logical columns. Data frames have a special attribute called row.names. Let's create our first data frame. We'll go back to R. And we'll assign or create a database X with the data.frame command. For the first column, we'll define a column named foo, and it's going to be from 1 to 4. That is obviously a numeric column. And then we're going to use the column bar and assign it the values of TTFF, so it becomes a logical column. If we evaluate X now, we can see that indeed we have a data frame. This is the position. First column is foo, second column is bar, and you have 4 values in foo and 4 values in bar. If you go back to RStudio, you'll see that X indeed is a data frame. It's going to tell us it has 4 objects, or 4 observations rather, sorry, and 2 variables, foo and bar. We can use n rows to get the number of rows and n call to get the number of columns. Now, let's look at another example, something more complex. Here we're defining 3 separate vectors. Tag, which is a numeric vector. Weight, which is a numeric vector. Condition, which is a character vector. And we're going to create a data frame from these 3 vectors called fish data, where we use the data frame and supply it with 3 different vectors. Let's evaluate this. And indeed, you can see that we've created a database with the tag variable, the weight variable, and the condition variable. Okay? Again, you can look at this using the environment in RStudio. Okay. Let's see how we refer to a variable by name in the data frame. To access a specific variable in a data frame, use the $sign. So this is a new thing we're learning now, a new notation, $sign. For example, let's look at the previous data frame. And also look at a new data frame. So in the previous data frame, we have 3 columns. We'll also evaluate these 3 vectors and create a new data frame. And let's look at what the $sign does. So in the old data frame, if I go fish data, $sign, tag, it's going to return that specific column. So I'm referencing a specific column in a specific data frame. In the same way here in the new data frame, if I issue df $name, I'm interested in the vector, or the column rather, name within the data frame. Very useful. Another cool thing in RStudio is the view data frame command. If I have a data frame, I can issue the view df command, so view the data frame. And obviously we got an error because, as I said, R is case sensitive. If I don't issue a capital V, it's going to give me an error. But if I do issue a capital V, it's going to open a nice little table, a GUI table. You can do the same by double clicking the DF in the environment column, in the environment tab. And this is gonna open an Excel-like table which you can edit. I actually don't recommend you do that because it's much simpler to do everything via the code and via the console, especially for larger data sets. So don't use the view command, or try to use it as minimally as possible. Another very cool command that we'll learn is the str command. This is used to get more detailed information about your data. Okay? Let's go back and use str for the data frame. And R gives us a nice overview of how many objects we have, how many variables we have, or sorry, how many observations we have. It's always confusing. And then the vectors or the columns: name, which is a character column; age, which is a numeric column; and student, which is a logical column. Very handy command to learn. So now we've created all these vectors and matrices and data sets. How do we remove the database? Or how do we clean? We started talking about it last week. The simplest way is just using the rm command. So if I'm not interested in the fish data anymore, I can issue rm fish data and evaluate this, and the fish data is gone. But be very careful with this. There is no undo function in R. If you remove a data set, it's gone forever. There's no way to possibly recover from that. So use that if you're only sure 100% you don't need that data anymore. Okay?